Since the recording of this podcast, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio reversed his decision to close all schools. He said the city is abandoning a 3% positive test threshold. Pre-K and elementary school children who already signed up for in-person learning are headed back to these classes on December 7th, with students with complex disabilities returning on December 10th.
Hello, School Transportation Nation. Welcome to episode 40 of the podcast. I'm Tony Corpin, publisher and president of School Transportation News. This episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. Our tech tip is brought to you by Zonar, the leader in smart fleet management. And our maintenance tip is brought to you by Cummins.
And I'm Ryan Gray, editor-in-chief at School Transportation News. Hopefully everybody had a great and safe Thanksgiving. Today we're going to be hearing from Corey Muirhead, executive vice president of Logan Bus Company Incorporated in New York City and the president of the New York School Bus Contractors Association. And then our special guest is Temple Grandin, who was a keynote speaker at our TSD Virtual conference last month.
Yeah, she was an awesome speaker too, Ryan. I think it'll be one heck of an interview. I'm really looking forward to hearing what Temple has to say. And also, speaking of virtual conferences, we have STN Expo Virtual coming up here in 2021. It's going to be January 25th through the 27th. The registration is now open, and we have a special Cyber Monday week, because technically it's not Monday anymore, but we can continue the good times with a special deal. We're offering $100 off your registration for STN Expo Virtual. So it would be $99 to register. That is a great value for all the good content and networking and everything you get. You need to act fast because that special offer will end Friday, 12/4 at 11:59 p.m. Check out stnexpovirtual.com for more details. All right, I'm going to kick things off with our tech tip, which is brought to you by Zonar, a leader in smart fleet management. Finding school bus tech funded by the ESSER fund can be hard, but good news for you. 2 of Zonar's leading solutions qualify. Verify that each bus is sanitized and safe to operate with their patented EVIR, the EVIR system, and know who rode which bus when using Zonar Z-Pass. And even more good news, Zonar also offers professional grant writing assistance to make the whole process easier and faster. Visit zonarsystems.com/cares-act to learn more. That's zonarsystems.com/cares-act. Well, Ryan, the Thanksgiving break was really nice. Spend a little time with the family. I feel like I've been spending time with my family a ton. We did the whole quarantine thing, so we're still only amongst the immediate family. But it's nice to have a little bit of downtime from work and kind of be thankful and grateful for what we have this year. And, I always find being grateful is a good thing. And there's a lot to look forward to in 2021, I think, as the vaccine nears. How about you, Ryan? How did you spend the Thanksgiving holiday with your family?
Well, much of the same. Stayed home, laid low. Of course, here in Los Angeles County, the restaurants closed back down. The last couple months, folks had been able to eat at restaurants, but in outdoor dining. So that ended, at least for the next couple of weeks. I know a lot of folks are just rolling with the punches here. It's really unfortunate to see, of course, with our economy, so many people, I think, are going to be laid off again after we saw some pretty good job numbers over the last several months. The unemployment rate fell to about 6.9% nationally through October. Hopefully we don't see too much of a spike here. Hopefully this is just in the near term. Obviously, so many people are very worried about increasing COVID-19 cases nationwide. And we're seeing schools, of course, closing. And we're going to talk with Corey Muirhead in a little bit in New York, who's going to talk about the New York City situation. But certainly, like you mentioned, Tony, quarantining my daughter's school, they're actually not opening until today, extending that Thanksgiving break to try to create a little buffer space between any Thanksgiving celebrations and getting back to school, hoping to mitigate any spread of the virus. So certainly still continues to be a lot of anxiety out there. You did mention some good news. There's multiple vaccines that appear now to be possible and very soon, but who gets them first? Last week, the National School Transportation Association released some information that they had petitioned the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to allow school bus drivers to be among the first to get a vaccine. Of course, there's been a big call for teachers and school staff. Education Week surveyed their readers in early November and found that 7 out of 10 school district leaders said teachers, school nurses, and specifically school bus drivers should be at the front of the line for vaccines. So I know that some emergency authorization was granted for the Pfizer vaccine, and there's another couple waiting in the wings. So hopefully we'll see those vaccines soon.
Yeah, Ryan, I posted that NSTA petition CDC story on Facebook in some of the driver groups just to kind of get reaction. And man, did we see reaction. There was just the comments were on fire about people saying how they wouldn't take the vaccine and that they don't want to be the guinea pig. And I think, you got to follow the science too, but there's definitely apprehension out there about taking a vaccine for whatever reason. People feel like, maybe there's a trust issue there, right? I want to be sure to voice that. I mean, personally, I'm a fan of vaccines. I just got the flu vaccine with my family and we get it every year. But some people, they just don't get vaccines. They don't believe in them. They won't take them. And that's kind of the fact of the life we live. There's some people that will and some people that won't. So we'll see what that ends up shaking out to look like once it's available to the greater public. But definitely, I think the impact of trying to get kids back in school and with school bus drivers being that kind of front line, I think that it would be valuable. But, it's only valuable if they're willing to take it, right? You can't force people, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, the trust issue is at the forefront of this thing. I mean, our nation has been through so much this year, and unfortunately, there's been so much politics involved leading up right through the elections. There's still a lot of mistrust around that. We're now in December, and it appears that President-elect Biden will be taking office next month. But there's just, so much confusion out there, I think, and people are just mistrusting each other. They're mistrusting what they read, what they're hearing. So certainly it will be an interesting, I hate to say that, I feel like I've been saying that for months and months now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But that's where we still are, right? We're just waiting to see how this thing all shakes out and seeing what's next. But we do know, and NSTA made this point, that I believe that something like 60% of drivers are over the age of 60, or maybe it was 2/3. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. But, we know that school bus driving tends to be a job that's done by a lot of folks that have already retired. Some of them, unfortunately, we know, just reading all the headlines about the medical oversight necessary or that's being called for additionally for school bus drivers, that many school bus drivers have pre-existing conditions. And we know that segment of the population is most at risk for COVID. So again, a lot of fear out there, but people want to get back to work. They want to stay at work. We want to get those kids in-person classes.
Yeah, Ryan, I mean, there's definitely uncertainty, and we did see an article out of the New York Post last week, and they pointed to a 0.2% rate in which people in the city's public school system have tested positive for coronavirus. That's 2 in every 1,000 tests, and it includes quite a few students and school staff who are all remote, meaning they didn't get the bug at school. So, with school closures, I'm not sure if it makes sense frankly, I'm not sure if the data supports closing schools, but that's what they're doing, right? And you said it earlier with the closing of restaurants, like that seems to be kind of almost secondary. Close the schools first, close the restaurants second. That kind of not sure if the thought process is solid there or not, but regardless, there's a lot of uncertainty and buses are running, they're not running. Either way, it's important to be ready. And we've got a maintenance tip for you from Cummins. They provide expertise, innovation, support for a world that's always on. The Cummins EPA 2021 B6.7 comes with a 5-year, 100,000-mile base warranty. For added peace of mind, Cummins offers multiple extended coverage plans options up to 10 years, designed to provide you with the coverage you need for your operation. All Cummins products are backed with the largest, most capable support network in North America, with over 3,700 certified repair locations across the U.S. and Canada. Your school buses are never far from a Cummins certified technician. Go to www.cummins.com/engines/school-bus to learn more about Cummins in the school bus market. 2 guests coming up, Corey Muirhead from Logan Bus and Temple Grandin. Stay tuned.
We are now joined by Corey Muirhead, Executive Vice President of Logan Bus Company Incorporated, a school bus contractor operating in New York City. And he's the president of the New York School Bus Contractors Association. Corey, it's been several months since you were on this podcast, and we welcome you back.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So New York City has been in the news a lot lately. One of the main reasons they announced recently, after reopening in-person classes, they're closing again because of this big surge of COVID-19 again that we're seeing now in the late fall months. Can you tell us how this is affecting school bus contractors?
Sure. So let's delineate and let's separate the surge in New York City and the surge in public schools, in the New York City public schools. First and foremost, let's say that there is not a surge in the New York City public schools. The New York City public school infection rate is 0.23%. Citywide rate is 3.09. The mayor went out in the summer and he put in very stringent, very strict guidelines so that the UFT and people would come back to classrooms. We didn't know a lot that we knew in July that we know now in November, December. So this rate has become extremely challenging. I'm sure you've all watched the news and you have followed along. The rate that the city uses is a different measurement than the rate that the state uses, and that's caused quite a bit of confusion. And it's just utter turmoil. It's upsetting. We've done an extremely good job of protecting the children, protecting the employees, protecting the general public with our advanced safety measures and cleaning measures. And we've only been in school for 8 weeks. So, the real problem that I have with this, and not to be political, but city schools closing before indoor dining in New York City is extremely upsetting and it's disheartening. We got to put an emphasis on these children. We got to put an emphasis on these teachers and education. And all the studies show that kids K through 8 need to be in school. They have a much better learning experience in school than remote learning. We should have done everything above and beyond to keep them in schools. We should have constantly recalibrated or relooked at the measures and the methods. And this is just for the kids and the teachers and things like that. Obviously, the trickle-down effect of what happens after this, one, it's unknown right now, but two, it's going to linger. Once again, contractors are in limbo. Yes, we have an agreement, but there are certain things in that agreement that will take time to materialize. And even while that agreement is materializing, we still have to lay off our entire workforce again. So you're going to decimate an industry that is already decimated. And unfortunately, we've kicked and we've screamed and we've done a great job of educating and informing. And we were on the forefront of the national news media for the return to school. But now, once again, we kind of find ourselves right back in the situation we were when they closed the first time. They're not really focusing on the bus companies and they're not focusing on getting the kids to school. It's challenging, it's upsetting. And I just hope that we learn from our past mistakes.
And I want to get to that deal, if you will, in a moment here. But first, I want to ask, is there any indication from New York City when they might reopen schools? Or is this kind of an indefinite thing rolling as we roll into 2021 and the months start ticking away as we get closer to the spring?
So not as we roll into 2021, thankfully right now. The first day that they can technically open again would be 11:30. I truly don't believe that will happen, but I do think that there is going to be additional measurements, additional testing, additional criteria to open the schools. I think what we'll see again is that there'll be some type of progressive rollout where special education kids will be first to go back, then K through 8 second, and then high school subsequently after that. I think that kind of ramp up philosophy has proven, a success for the city in the past. I think that that's what they're going to do again, since it was a proven method. I hope that's what they're going to do again. But as we've seen on the news over the past couple of days, everyone is worried about the holiday season. Everyone is worried from what I'll call Thursday the 26th to, December the 26th. We have a month of holidays and seeing family and friends, and as much as we all need to be safe, people are still going to see their friends and their family, and people are going to go out and they're going to shop. So this positivity rate can skyrocket. Now, while the skyrocketing can happen in the citywide rate, if the public schools can still remain at levels that they were before the shutdown, and if they can put in additional measurements and additional methods to continue to keep that positivity rate in the schools down, then I'm hoping that we will see some schools opening in the month of December. But colleges have opted to go fully remote from Thanksgiving to January 1st. Other school districts in the nation have opted to do the same. So that is in the cards for New York City as well.
So, Corey, you talk about laying off all of your employees again. Is that correct? Because of this closure?
It is certainly anticipated that we may have to lay off our entire workforce again in December.
So certainly there's never a good time to lay off anybody, much less, going into the holiday season. There have been other contractors nationwide, some in New York, that have had to close their doors permanently because of COVID-19. And this really comes back to when COVID-19 first took hold, transportation being shut down, right? And so many school districts were able to get safety nets, if you will, to continue paying their employees, continue paying for their transportation costs. Contractors have not been so lucky. The first couple of months after the COVID-19 pandemic started in March, April, May, that time frame, you and your fellow contractors were not getting paid by New York City. But recently, there was about $106 million, I believe, in back pay that New York City agreed to pay the contractors. But that's really pennies on the dollar, isn't it? Can you talk more about these standby transportation expenses that I don't think you'll ever really be able to recoup, will you? No matter how much money they throw at you?
No, we won't. And yeah, I can't use the words pennies on the dollar, but I'm glad that you did. It's certainly challenging. I think the city recognized in July, August, oh my God, we still need to have school busing. And then they came back and that opened a window of negotiation. We certainly took a significant haircut, I'll call it, on the revenue that we should have received from May, June, July, and August, even forfeiting a significant number of revenue for some of those months. What we needed to do is we needed to get reimbursed for and or pay for expenses that we kept open, expenses like our maintenance shops. Even though we had to lay off maintenance for a couple of months, they still operated during the pandemic until we received word that schools were going to be completely shut down to the end of the year. We kept all of our driver certifications intact. We kept our HR team intact. Obviously, we had to pay for all the insurance on the buses and other miscellaneous insurances to make sure that we were covered and that we can still roll all the registrations on the vehicles, DOT stickers on the vehicles, which is still a work in progress. So yeah, we tried to operate in a skeleton staff and we laid off the people that we needed to lay off. We cut the expenses we needed to cut. We tried to go very, very light so that we can stretch this through. And we made it out on the other side, but we still needed money to recoup those costs. That significant layout for 6 months. So yeah, it was challenging. We're glad that we made a deal with the city. The best part about the deal with the city that we made was that it prevents future situations like this, and we will be protected, and the workers will be protected to a certain extent should a future shutdown like what is happening right now occurs.
And that's the deal where New York City is agreeing to pay 43% of contracts through 2025 if schools close for more than 5 days in a row, correct?
That's correct. So, the 2025, that's a very sensationalized way to word it in the press, but we have a 5-year agreement with the city, whether schools close or not, for transportation services. That's by state ed RFP law that we're allowed to have a 5-year agreement. Who knows if there will be multiple shutdowns in multiple years, but yes, we will be paid 43% after the shutdown if there is a shutdown for a month or 2 months or a significant period of time. But where we arrived at the 43% is we needed our fixed cost, we needed our overhead, and the most important thing here is we needed to protect our employees in the industry that they wouldn't exit if there was a second shutdown. So the 43% actually covers the medical benefits and the pension benefits for all of our workers. So while they may need to be laid off, yes, that's an unfortunate situation. That's something that we don't want to do. What will happen is they'll collect unemployment. They'll collect the stimulus. Now, the stimulus is different from the summer to now. It was $600 in the summer. Now that was feds. Now it's in New York State, it's an additional $300. So they are taking a hit there. Of course, we recognize that, and that's challenging, but still, workers will receive unemployment plus the stimulus for right now, and they will receive their health and pension benefits. We're hoping that this is enough to entice them to ride it out with us and to come back when we reopen. I think that medical benefits during a global health pandemic is the number one priority for everybody. And it should have been the number one priority when we had this the first time. I'm glad the city recognized that. I'm glad they agreed to this agreement.
Absolutely. And hopefully that helps. Obviously, the entire industry continues to slog through this horrendous driver shortage, mechanic shortage as well. So hopefully this will help a little bit at least. I have to touch on this. Speaking in New York City, recently there was more news made on the school bus contract side where it looks like the city is setting up a new nonprofit to take over about 800 routes, 890 million or so that's going to be pushed into this operation over the next 5 years or so. Thoughts on that? You essentially competing with your customer.
Well, yeah, I'll say one thing to pound our chest at Logan is if you look at the panel for educational policy notes that they made, the rates that in which they have to operate, what we consider what's called a daily rate here. Our contract's a little bit different in the city. We don't go by monthly services or yearly services. We break it down by daily rate. The daily rate in which the city submitted for approval to the panel for educational policy is actually more expensive than Logan Bus Company and affiliates. So I applaud myself and I tell the city, and I say it in jest, but I say it seriously as well, because that speaks to what type of company we are. We can do it cheaper than them. And, that's not to be combative. That's not to be adversarial. That's just a stone cold fact. But look, if they want to jump into the ring, I'm more than happy. It's fine. I just hope that they adhere to the same rules and regulations as we do. I hope that they're good neighbors. We'll be sharing a union and they'll be contributing to the union benefits. They'll see how difficult that is. Now, of course, New York City, the largest municipality in the world, deals with countless number of unions, and they will learn the intricacies of New York City school busing. And I think that they're going to see how hard it is. I think that they're going to see how challenging the driver shortage is. Of course, they listen to us, and of course, they understand where we come from. But now that they're running it themselves and it's not just hearsay, I think it's going to be challenging, but look, good luck. I have a very good relationship with the city and everybody involved. I'm very happy with where my company is in our relationship with the city. And if they're going to help progress the industry and move it forward, then I'm all for that.
It certainly will be interesting. I want to get your thoughts on one of your good friends, Michael Martucci. He won finally after weeks of counting mail-in voting and court challenges. He's the new state senator for the 42nd district there in New York, former school bus guy. What are your thoughts on that?
So proud, so unbelievable, such a good accomplishment. What's funny is on Michael's exit speech of his presidency at the New York School Bus Contractors Association, he gave a really good speech, and he made people cry, he made people laugh. He gave like a very Jimmy Valvano, Lou Gehrig speech, and everybody in the crowd said the same thing. They were like, "Oh my God, Michael, can't believe the way you speak, can't believe how you're such a good public speaker." So he was destined for this. I mean, he's an executive, he can publicly speak, he cares about kids, he cares about employees. We're all extremely happy for him. We couldn't have a better ally up in Albany. And I think, both as a professional relationship and on a personal note, as a personal friend of mine and hanging him outside of work, he's a family man. He's a great guy. He's just a good friend. I'm excited to see what he does up there.
Certainly good to have a school bus guy in the state capital, and who knows where he'll go from here. Well, thanks again, Corey, for joining us today and sharing your insights on what's going on there in New York City. And really the best of luck to you and the entire staff at Logan Bus.
Thank you very much for the kind words and, as always, the well wishes.
Well, thanks for that great conversation, Corey, Ryan. Always interesting to hear what's going on in New York City. It's hard to believe that Thanksgiving is behind us and Christmas and New Year's are just around the corner. That means one thing: it's time to make your New Year's resolution. Well, one thing I'd like to encourage our listeners today is not to procrastinate on that resolution you made to get your hands on the most powerful routing software and parent app on the market today. TransFinder's browser-based Route Finder Plus is the most innovative software in the industry, and it works seamlessly with Stop Finder, which gives you the best information on where your bus is located. Route Finder Plus and Stop Finder were voted the most innovative software by the industry and the leaders at the Bus Technology Summit that was just held back in September. Route Finder Plus and Stop Finder, they go together like New Year's and resolutions. To learn more about the most robust routing and parent app in the industry, email free Stop Finder at transfinder.com and put resolution in the subject line. Our next guest is none other than the legendary Temple Grandin. Keep listening.
We are now joined by Temple Grandin, our opening keynote speaker at our TSD Virtual, author, inventor, and of course, an advocate for people who live on the autism spectrum. Temple Grandin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here today.
You had such a great talk back on November 9th. There were almost 300 people in that session. So many people were engaged and they were just looking forward to what you had to say. And you made a lot of great points, but I want to expound upon a couple of things with you. Obviously, when you're dealing with students who have disabilities, whether they are on the spectrum or not, there is a lot of attention to detail. But sometimes what we've found here reporting on the industry, that some of that attention can be misplaced. And one of the big issues that I really am eager to get your thoughts on is the incidences that we see across the nation too quickly. A lot of times school bus drivers or school districts will call the police when a student is acting up on the school bus. And as you talked back on November 9th, obviously that spectrum of autism is very wide, right? And there's a lot of variances with that. And you talked a lot about acting out and sensory issues and whatnot. What are your thoughts on, involving law enforcement to get involved with a student on the school bus, especially if they have autism?
Well, that's way too broad. If it's a little kid in third grade, I think it's ridiculous. Autism is a very big spectrum, and it goes from the people that run Silicon Valley, Einstein, to somebody who can't dress themselves and remains nonverbal. So it's a huge, huge spectrum. And I got to look at, why is the child having a problem? It was very frustrating to me when I was a young child when I could not communicate. That causes a lot of meltdowns and tantrums. You have to figure out what is something like maybe sensory overload causing a behavior, and what is just simply bad behavior. Some of my tantrums I had when I was in elementary school, the penalty was real simple: no television for one night. That prevented a lot of tantrums. Getting the police involved, that should be a last resort. There's a lot of boys that might be ADHD, they might be dyslexic, they might be mildly autistic. What they need is a good shop teacher to turn them around. There's a huge shortage today of skilled trades, huge shortage of people to fix buses. I worked in construction for 25 years. I've worked at every major meat company. My equipment, a thing called a center track restrainer system, you want to see it work, you can look up Beef Plant Video Tour with Temple Grandin, is in all of the big meat packing plants. And I worked with talented welders and machinery designers that were either dyslexic, ADHD, or mildly autistic, and they're not getting replaced. And then we're losing valuable skills on being able to build things. And some of these kids that are the trouble kids, they'd be great in some of these high-end skilled trades. And then there's another bunch, they need to be going out in Silicon Valley and doing programming. Nobody thought to show the kid programming. Maybe he needs to learn some JavaScript, learn how a video game actually is made, runs on JavaScript if it's Minecraft. Teach the kid JavaScript. I had a great science teacher who turned me around. I was a terrible student. I wasn't interested in studying until studying became a pathway to a goal of becoming a scientist. And when studying became a pathway to a goal, then I turned it around and I studied. And good teachers, they can make all the difference in the world for a child.
Pathway to a goal, you hit the nail on the head. And one of the things that we talked about, Temple, during the TSD Virtual was IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and life skills. You talked about life skills and the importance of teaching kids on a school bus how to ride a bus, how to be able to take yourself shopping when you're older and you age out of the school district at 21 if you're protected by IDEA. And another thing with that too is work, right? And that's what you were just talking about, your career, unveiling a pathway to students. School bus mechanics, big shortage of those, as well as drivers. One of the attendees during your session mentioned that one of his best mechanics is on the spectrum. And I know of several other people that are on the spectrum that work in school transportation as monitors, for example, right along the lines of what you're saying, right, of engaging these students and really, when you're talking about educating the whole student, not educating or transporting their disability, it's getting to know them, right, and what their likes are.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. The other thing is a lot of these students have uneven skills. They're good at one thing, bad at something else. And how's a kid going to find out he might like mechanics if he's not exposed to it? I think one of the worst things the schools did is taking out so many hands-on classes: music, sewing, cooking, woodworking, welding, theater. Theater is a field you can go into, but you don't know if you're going to like that until you try it.
Exactly. And a lot of these kids are great candidates for apprenticeships in transportation or elsewhere in school districts. So you're right. A lot of people were talking about losing all the trades in school has really hurt us. Something else I wanted to talk to you about really briefly. You talked a lot about overcomplicating things, especially for students with disabilities. You don't want to complicate things more than they have to be complicated, right? And that comes back to the IEP meetings. You mentioned something earlier to me that I thought was really interesting. You said that IEPs, the documentation where it has transportation as a related service or any of the other services, educational or otherwise, that these students need, they should be relatively short and sweet, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing is we're not having enough emphasis on learning life skills. I'm seeing too many kids where there might be an honors student academically, but they've never gone shopping. They've never had a job. They get through college, may even have an advanced degree, and they still can't hold a job because they haven't learned any work skills. And they're doing stuff like being late for work and not getting the report written or whatever the work is. And learning work skills is just so important. Because when I was out working in construction with these major meat companies, I'm going to estimate that 20% of the machinery designers, drafting people, and welding people I worked with would be special ed kids today. I am saying that absolutely seriously, and we shouldn't be sticking our nose up at this stuff. Because I went to a state-of-the-art chicken processing plant last year. All the fancy equipment came from Holland in 100 shipping containers because we don't have the skills to make it anymore.
Crazy. And another part of this, too, is engaging parents, right? Making sure that you have that open communication.
One big thing you got to do, you got to get parents and the school on the same wavelength. Parents, the community, the school all need to work together. That's something we need to do because the kids that are most successful, parents and teachers are cooperating. My mother was in constant communication with my third grade teacher, and if I had a tantrum, I'd get home from school and Mom would go, you threw a tantrum in Mrs. Deitch's class today. You know the rule, there'll be no television tonight. There was a consequence for that. And yes, and I think it's really good that we, put together individualized programs. But there is a tendency to overcomplicate. First of all, you got to figure out what's causing the problem. Sensory issues are often overlooked. So you have a kid that can't stand the school bell. One of the ways to help them get over that is when nobody's at school, let him press the button. When they start to learn to initiate the sound, then it stops being something they're afraid of. But we need to be getting more of the mentality of what can this person be good at and do. My ability in art was always encouraged. Always encouraged all the time, and that became the basis of my design business. For another kid, it might be math, and nobody thought to introduce computer programming. Because I've been out to Silicon Valley. Half those programmers are on the autism spectrum. We wouldn't have the technology we're using right now without a little bit of autism genetics. Autism's a big spectrum, and it goes from, geeky and nerdy to somebody who might not be able to dress themselves with other medical problems on top of it. And it's all got the same word and then gets treated the same way. I'm a visual thinker, so I start visualizing ways to solve problems. And we've got to rein in the bullying. We absolutely have got to rein in the bullying stuff. And this is where all the teachers, neighborhood parents need to get together and stop some of this stuff. And some of the stuff, bad stuff that's gone on social media. Kids saying awful things and then another kid commits suicide. It's just atrocious.
Absolutely. Well, Temple, again, thank you so much for taking some time out to speak with us a little bit more. Again, thank you so much for your November 9th keynote, widely popular. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's been good to be with you. And what we got to do is get parents and teachers and the schools, everybody working together. That's where you have the biggest successes, where the parents and the school are on the same wavelength. Rules are the same at home and school. And then things often go a whole lot better.
You're a wise woman, Temple. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks a lot to Corey Muirhead and Temple Grandin for joining us on the podcast. Shout out to our sponsors this episode, Transfinder, Zonar, and Cummins. Visit stnonline.com for your news and analysis on all aspects of student transportation. Also, don't forget to sign up for STN Expo Virtual at stnexpovirtual.com and use code STN100 for that $100 off discount through Friday, 12/4. Use it before 11:59 p.m. Pacific. We love you, listeners. We want you to subscribe, stream, and share this podcast with your friends. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Also, check out the podcast on stnpodcast.com, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time, School Transportation Nation.